An airplane, 130 for people, and for 9 years. The world thought they were all dead. The government stopped the search. But then a radio call shook the entire world. Mayday, Mayday, we are alive. On the night of December 27, 1948, the world's largest passenger aircraft, the Douglas DC-3, took off from Miami for Florida. There were 125 passengers and 9 crew members on board, a total of 134 people. At an altitude of about 8,300 feet over the North Atlantic Ocean, the plane was moving forward at its speed of 180 miles per hour. It was 8:13 p.m. In the cockpit, Captain Robert Miller and his co-pilot saw everything as normal. But suddenly, their communication with San Juan Air Traffic Control AATC began to weaken. Captain Miller reported that they were facing a minor technical problem. This was his last voice. Exactly 10 seconds after this, the plane disappeared from the AEC radar forever. The plane's last location was right in the middle of the Bermuda Triangle. What happened that night was much more terrifying than any technical fault. The plane was caught in a vortex of the world's most mysterious place, the Bermuda Triangle, which no one had ever heard of or seen before. In the blink of an eye, screams erupted inside the plane. Captain Miller tried his best to handle the plane, but by then it was too late. The storm had engulfed the entire plane and was spinning it like a toy. All the electronic equipment of the plane, the compass, the radar, everything had shut down. The plane was no longer under any human control. It was just flying blindly at the speed of the storm. After struggling in that deadly vortex for about half an hour, when the plane emerged from the storm, there was only endless sea all around. The plane's engines were still not working, and it was slowly falling downwards. Just then, the co-pilot's eyes fell on an island ahead. It was an unknown, untouched island. Everyone knew that their death was just a few moments away. The plane crashed into a massive old tree on that island. Hundreds of thick branches of the tree trapped the plane like a net. And this was the miracle that saved. The lives of 134 people were saved. Although the passengers' lives were saved by the plane getting stuck in the tree, it was a painful beginning. Sounds of groaning and crying were coming from inside the plane. Captain Robert Miller, whose head had struck a panel, sprang into action as soon as he regained consciousness. He immediately calmed the people down. A retired Army doctor on board, Evelyn, wasted no time and began caring for the injured. A total of 10 people were seriously injured. Someone's hand was broken. Someone's leg was broken. 2 people had suffered deep head injuries. The rest were in shock but safe. When everyone slowly disembarked from the plane, they realized where they had ended up. This was an island that did not exist on any map. There was dense forest all around, strange trees and plants, and an unfamiliar silence. The challenge of survival. The first and biggest challenge was water. Everyone was thirsty, but there was no sign of any river, waterfall, or clean water source anywhere on the island. Their only hope now was rainwater. Using his experience, Captain Miller divided the people into groups. One group was assigned the task of retrieving food, medicine, and useful items from the plane's wreckage. The second group joined the captain to build a temporary shelter for the night. They used the broken seats of the plane, metal sheets, and large leaves to prepare a makeshift roof to protect them from the night's cold and potential rain. That first night, as they sat huddled together, only one question was in their hearts: will anyone come looking for them? Will they ever get out of this unknown place? A new tragedy. The next morning brought a new and much more difficult challenge. Shortage of food stood as the biggest problem before them. The little food found from the plane was not going to last long. They had to search for food on the island, but there was no way of knowing which fruit was poisonous and which was edible. This ignorance stood as a threat of death at every step. In this attempt, a middle-aged man ate an unknown fruit, and within a few hours, he died in agony. This was the first death on the island, which shook everyone to the core. For the first time, everyone realized that they were not just stranded, but were getting closer to death every day, and uncertainty began to weigh heavily on the entire group. Following this incident, fear and the first conflict over limited food began among the people. But Captain Miller and Dr. Evelyn handled the situation and did not let the people break down. The radio signal attempt. Meanwhile, Arthur West, an engineer on the plane, began trying to fix the broken radio. After many hours of hard work, he succeeded in sending a weak signal. He sent his last location and a message for help. But there was no answer from the other side. The radio battery died, and the only means of communication was broken forever. The desperate escape. Days passed, and when there was no sign of rescue even after 10 days, the patience of 4 boys and 1 girl gave way. One night, while everyone was in deep sleep, they quietly took a small boat made from the plane's wreckage and set out into the sea. They felt that trying was better than dying. They never returned. What happened to them and where they went remains a mystery. Organizing for the long haul. After their departure, the remaining people realized they would have to stay on this island for a long time. Necessity slowly took the place of hope. Captain Miller gathered everyone and proposed a permanent arrangement, and the work was divided. One team would go into the jungle every day to collect food and fruit. The second team took over the task of strengthening and repairing the shelter. Drive. Evelyn and some others focused on caring for the injured and the sick. The search operation. On the other hand, the US government had launched the largest search operation in history to find the plane. Every inch of the Atlantic Ocean was searched, but not even a single piece of the plane was found. After a week of continuous searching, when no clue was found, this massive campaign gradually cooled down, adapting to the island. Meanwhile, the people remaining on the island began to learn the art of living. They made tools like knives and spears by grinding the island's stones and the plane's metal. The biggest challenge was the island's wild boars, which live in herds and would attack their camp at night. A hunting trainer on the plane taught people how to throw spears and set traps. After many days of planning and practice, they hunted their first wild boar. It was a terrifying but emotional moment. 2 people were injured during the hunt, but when they returned to the camp with that catch, it wasn't just food, it was a victory for their unity and determination. With broken coconut trunks, they wrote help in large letters on the sand, hoping that perhaps the passing ship or aircraft might see it. Every day, they kept their eyes fixed in that direction. 6 months passed. For the outside world, aircraft NC16002 and the 130 for people aboard had become an unsolved mystery. After spending $45 million, the US government officially closed the search operation and declared everyone missing. Their families were told there was no longer any hope of their return. But on this unknown island, life was moving forward somehow. Those who were seriously injured began to slowly recover under Dr. Evelyn's care and started helping with small tasks. However, due to illness and despair, some more people died. Now, only 114 people remained on the island. They began burying their deceased with respect and became each other's mental support. At night, when everyone sat around the fire, they would tell stories of their old lives and sometimes even sing songs. About a year and a half later, for the first time on the island, the cry of a baby resonated, which sparked a new hope in everyone's hearts. About a year and a half later, that baby born on the island filled everyone with a new reason to live. Time passed, and 2 years were completed. During this time, they had learned to live on the island. They had started small-scale farming and invented new ways of catching fish. Still, the desire to return to the civilized world was alive in their hearts, which kept them restless every night. Under the leadership of engineer Arthur Vance, everyone decided together to build a large boat. This was their biggest and most ambitious project yet. After months of hard work using aircraft pieces, wood, and vines, they prepared a large and sturdy boat. The day they launched that boat into the sea was no less than a festival. 25 of the strongest and most experienced people were boarded on that boat with the promise that they would return with help. The boat fared well for a few miles from the island, but then the weather showed its true form. Suddenly, dark clouds gathered in the sky, and a terrible storm surrounded their boat from all sides. High waves overturned the boat. Only a few of them were able to swim back to the island shore somehow, but 16 people lost their lives in that accident. This was on the island. The ground was shaking as if it would split open. Mountains began to crumble and fall, and trees were uprooted. Everyone was running here and there to save their lives. Inadvertently, this very earthquake was to become the cause of their salvation. Due to the earthquake, that aircraft wreckage, which had been lying in the same place for years, shifted from its position. Some wires and equipment buried under it came out. A few days after the earthquake, when everything calmed down, engineer Arthur Vance was inspecting the broken wreckage. Suddenly, his gaze fell on the aircraft's radio. which was now lying at a different angle. At the same time, according to scientists, an intense solar storm flare occurred, affecting the Earth's magnetic field. Perhaps it was a miracle caused by this astronomical event or the connection of the shifted wires. As soon as Arthur flipped a switch on the radio, a slight crackling sound came from it. His heart started beating faster. With trembling hands, he connected the remaining wires. And for the first time in 9 years, the radio's green light turned on. He immediately picked up the mic and said in a trembling voice, "Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. This is flight NC16002. Is anyone listening? We are alive." When the operator sitting in Miami Air Traffic Control heard this message, he couldn't believe his ears. But when Arthur provided the aircraft's registration number, the captain's name, and the flight date, silence swept through the entire control room. The US government immediately restarted the rescue operation. The people on the island kept fires burning day and night to create smoke. 9 full years had passed. One morning, when the remaining 82 people woke up, a small dot appeared on the far horizon. That dot gradually grew larger and eventually turned out to be a US Navy ship. Seeing that ship, the pain, agony, and weight of 9 years flowed away in a tide of tears. People were crying, laughing, and hugging each other. When the rescue team landed on the island, they were stunned by the sight. The people whom the world had considered dead 9 years ago were now standing before them. The story of their return shook the whole world. A year later, in 1958, author James Baldwin wrote a book based on the experiences of these survivors, titled Lost in the Echo of 9 Years' Survival of Flight NC16002. This book became one of the best-selling books in America and proved that even a small ray of hope can pierce through the thickest darkness.